Hi, and welcome to another Dice and Anarchy Deck Tech. Today we'll be featuring Loot, the key to everything. Loot is a green, blue, red commander with Ward 1. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top X cards of your library, where X is equal to the number of card types among other non-land permanents you control. You may play those land cards this turn. So just a quick rundown, you would use artifacts, creatures, enchantments, lands, planeswalkers to activate that trigger. Also, battles can be used as well. I personally don't use them in this deck. To give a basic rundown, we will start off with artifacts first. So like any good green, heavy producing top deck gold, we start off with our mana rocks. Coming in with some little bit of power, we have a Chrome Mox, a Soul Ring, a Manifold, a Felwar Stone, a Chromatic Lantern, an Arcane Signet, a Mind Stone as our base for mana rock artifacts, and a couple extra triggers as a Horning Greed. Helps out with landfall in this deck since that generates from this theme. We have a Key to the Vault. Now, Key to the Vault, whenever an equipped creature deals combat to a player, look at the top cards in the library, you may exile a non-land card from among them. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order, and you may cast that card without paying its mana cost. We have some creatures, such as Fyndhorn Elves. We have a Lotus Cobra, a Zertrod Druid, Birds of Paradise, everyone's favorite, and an Ornithopter Paradise. That netted most of the mana which we need. To continue, since it is a landfall trigger, we have things such as Azusa, Lost But Seeking, an Avenger of Zendikar, Titania, Protector of Argoth, a Tatova, Benethik Druid, Omnath, Locust of Rage, an Oracle of Moldiah, a Rampaging Balofs, Morag, Fury of Akum, a Cultivator Colossus, and a Runavak Excavator. Also to pair with it, with the same trigger as you may play lands in the graveyard, is a Crucible of Worlds. To also pair off with most of the landfall, we will use Exploration, as well as Burgeoning. From some nice enchantment triggers, we have Rhystic Study and Mystic Remora, great card value. We have a Thought Reduction, which also gives you great value. A Mana Flare, which even though it's a double-edged sword, it gives you double mana as well as everyone. Another double-edged sword would be Concording Crossroads, which gives everything haste, but it is cheap. So 1-drop checks for art enchantment when you get it out. Next would be On a Path Journey as our last enchantment. I highly recommend Doc Orlok, Grizzled Genius, because spells from your graveyard and exile cost 2 less to cast, and plotting cards from your hand cost 2 more. So anything you choose to cast from Loot, when his trigger goes off in the upkeep, will cost 2 less. We have a Trinket Mage, so we want to fetch our 1-drop Soul Ring, Mana Vault, or any other or less artifact, we can do so. We have a Lab Main, so when we run out of options, run out of card draw, get countered through the game, we still have a win con when we have nothing left. Xerxes, Withering Storm, whichever you draw a card, you get to create a 1/1 snake, and whenever it deals combat damage, you get to draw that many cards. We have a Sakashima of Thousand Faces, so we can copy Loot to get extra triggers. We have a Jin Kataxis that allows us to have a max hand size, and for no one to have a hand as well. Seedborn Muse for untaps on our rocks and other creatures that need to be untapped. Kruphix, God of Horizons, for when we need to have mana to be dumped into our mana pool and keep solid, since Loot will cost a lot, and a lot of cards are high value. Atali, Primal Storm, so we have it so when it attacks, we can get a top card of each player's library, and we may cast any number of those cards without playing. Kind of going with the whole theme of casting from exile. We have a Maelstrom Wanderer, which also gives creatures that control have haste, and we have Cascade, bringing up more high drops. And a little extra flavor, Crater of Behemoth. When it enters the battlefield, all creatures get +X and trample equal to how many creatures we have. Pairing very well with Avengers of Zendikar and other landfall triggers, having a lot of creatures on the board. Since card type matters, we have 2 planeswalkers in. We have an Oko the Ringleader. We also have a Jace Reawakened. Moving in to spells to the deck by color, we have a Green Sun Zenith, so we can have a tutor for a high drop green creature. Since we do pump out a lot of mana, usually recommended creatures to pull out. Maelstrom Wanderer for the haste and the Cascade. Craterhoof Behemoth for board state and power, or even Xerix for extra card draw. And if all else fails, you can always grab a bird. Moving on to spells, we have a crop rotation, so we can sack a land and go in for a new land, hopefully being a fetch, so that way we can recur it, or keep recurring it from the graveyard to get landfall triggers. We have a Worldly Tutor that allows us to fetch for a creature as well. A Beast Within for a removal spell, very great in green, since it is target permanent. Another target permanent would be Chaos Warp, that way we can be able to remove outside of white and black. Blasphemous Act, nice little board wipe for 13 damage. An Insurrection for when all else fails, take the board. Vandalblast for an overload cost, we can destroy all artifacts we don't control. A few extra counters are never bad, so we have a counter spell, a Chain of Vapor, a Pact of Negation, and a Spell Swindle. Also as well as a Counterflux. And also we would have Rapid Hybridization for another removal, and Fabricate for a search for an artifact. Usually pull in 2 artifacts that help the deck progress very quickly. Since it's a landfall deck, usually Crucible of Worlds is a great choice, as well as a Horn of Greed. That way giving us card draw advantage, and or returning and recurring lands to the graveyard, to battlefield. Getting more triggers off of our creatures. Moving into a land spread, since loot in this deck has a lot of high value costs, we go with a little bit extra lands than normal. We would go with 4 islands, basic, for fetching, and land trigger, to explain further, 3 mountains, and 5 forests. There is a Reliquary Tower, so we have no max hand size, an Arcane Lighthouse, so the antenna of the turn, creatures your opponents control lose Hexproof and Shroud, and can't have Hexproof and Shroud, so that way your spells can target them. A Homeward Path, just in case permanents are taken, permanents can return to the field. Moving on into the lands that can produce all color, you would have an Exotic Orchard and a Reflecting Pool, as well as a Command Tower, a Spire of Industry, which as long as you control an artifact, you can add 1 mana for the cost of 1 life. A Plazas of Heroes, where you can add 1 mana of any color to cast legendary spells, and then once you get a legendary out, you can add 1 mana of any color of that legendary. Moving into our fetches, just 2 in this deck, with a Wooded Foothills and a Scalding Tarn. Usually recommended to pull, alpha or beta, but unfortunately this deck just runs with shocks. For our green-blue, we have a Rejuvenating Springs, a 2 or more opponent. Usually this deck plays against more than 1 opponent, so 2 or more opponents in EDH is great. We have a Yamava Coast, which is a ping land for 1, doesn't enter tapped. Moving into green and red, we have a Rootbound Crag, which is a mountain or forest. A Spire Garden, which is 2 or more opponents again. Moving now into our red and blue, we have a Steam Vents Shockland, a Sulphur Falls, which is an island or a mountain, a Fiery Inlet, which is a pay 1 life, as well as the Shivan Reef, which does the same. Also, there is a Kragon Pathway, which is either a mountain or a forest, depending on what you choose for it to come into play. Once chosen, it stays that. Also, 2 very important lands is Yamava, Cradle of Growth. That way it creates all of your lands into a forest in addition to its other types, making color conversion easy. And my personal favorite, Otawara, Sorin City, which has a channel ability for 3 in blue that you can discard it and target artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker to its owner's hand, and it costs 1 less for each legendary creature you control. You can remove a land. Moving into our landfall combos, you have Ghost Quarter and Wasteland. So, with things such as Crucible of Worlds, Titania, and Azusa Lost But Seeking, you'd be able to play 2 additional lands. You're able to play lands from your graveyard. So you would play a Wasteland, you would sack it to destroy another basic land on the other side of the field. It would go to your graveyard. You get to play 2 additional lands from on each of your turns. So you play Wasteland, get the trigger of Titania, get it for 5/3 elemental. If you have Lotus Cobra, other landfall triggers, obviously all those would block. You'd also get to now destroy another land, put it into the graveyard through Crucible Worlds and Azusa, be able to play it again. So to destroy 3 lands, to get 3 lands and get value, it's a very nice cycle. But the very core strength of this deck is to get out your commander, usually by turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, hitting the low cost variancy of all different types, whether it be, lands such as Dryad Arbiter, which counts as a creature and a land, playing things such as artifacts, things as like Chrome Mox or Soul Ring. So when it hits upkeep, Loot will check for permanents, and it will check and hit for any non-land permanent, so it would be a Planeswalker, an artifact, a land or creature, and an enchantment, usually netting about 5. If you were to exile the top 4, if you were to exile the top 4, you'll be able to play any of those spells for that turn, giving you power and acceleration during the turn, as well as the ability to play out of your hand. All within the range of, 1 to 2 mana. Also, having Ward 1 is very nice, because if it ever is targeted early, usually they don't have enough mana to pay to destroy Loot. And that is the deck tech for Loot, the key to everything. Hope you guys enjoy.